Welcome, everybody. This is Building for Peace with Hannah Jewell. Today we're here with Rachael Crow. I met Rachael last summer at a Sufi dance camp and was so delighted to learn of her story. Then later I read her book and I was even more amazed, and I had to bring her onto this cast today. She is a woman who's had an amazing journey with cancer, and as I know several women personally dealing with cancer right now, and there seems to be a widespread need for this conversation, I invited Rachael onto the show. It's so wonderful to have you here, Rachael. Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for inviting me, Hannah. And yeah, I absolutely agree. It just feels like these conversations are absolutely needed because so many people are getting ill with so many different things. And, my life's purpose seems to be about bringing people back into balance and health and in lots of other ways. But yeah, I think people relate to personal stories. So
Absolutely. And as you will know, the healer archetype is almost always the wounded healer, and it's from the journey of our own path that the medicine we serve comes through.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And yours is a powerful journey. Um,
Yeah, I feel like I've lived about 5 lifetimes in one this time around.
yeah, yeah. So maybe we can just start with um, a little bit about who you were as a person before the cancer diagnosis, because this is an important moment, I feel, for anyone who's gone through a healing journey to be able to then look back and say, I love that person who I was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because ultimately that person has brought us to here. So, I'm always grateful for all the stages of Rachael before. But yeah, I suppose before I had the cancer diagnosis, I mean, I've always worked in service. I've always been a healer. I worked before we moved to Wales, I was in Bristol working with addicts. Um, I love my work. I was teaching Reiki to addicts, and it was just addicts in recovery. And seeing the miracle of change in people was amazing. But um, I consciously decided when we moved to Wales, I had a baby, Dorothy, who's now 14, that
Mhm.
I didn't want to do that anymore. That I kind of felt a bit burnt out from it. Um, and it's not the easiest energy to be working in, that kind of that addictive, and that's my journey. I come from that addictive background, so I've healed myself of that with the support of lots of people. um so yeah, so I focused. I'd always had moon times had been my business, where I was selling cloth pads and moon cups, menstrual sponges, and womb work. They'd always kind of been a bit of a back burner.
Mhm.
I decided to push that business and make it my main earner. um so yeah, it was
Yeah.
that was what I was well known as. I was kind of called Rachel Moontime.
Okay. Funny how these names stick
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah. So yeah, these are important pieces because um, addiction is a very challenging energy to work with.
yeah,
And to have moved through that yourself and already been in the place where you were offering that medicine, and then life comes through and you start working with the womb so extensively. And then what happens next?
yeah. Well, we moved to Wales, and I was pregnant again with my son. So I was 42 having my what's been my last child, which was fairly old. Having been 17 when I had my first, who
Mhm.
is now 30, 33, 34. So um and so I was embracing kind of being mother again and sort of stepping back a bit from working so much. But at the same time, we were forming a community. And from the camps where we met, I had this real sense of family and community, and how can we create that in our lives? Um, and I thought that it was intentional community. So a few of us came together and bought a house and bought land. and it didn't work out, you know, the personalities, and we hadn't done the groundwork before buying the place, which I always recommend people who are do the getting to know each other before you buy a house.
Uh-huh,
So
absolutely.
it's one of the, you know, I can look back in hindsight and just see how much energy I was putting into mothering, building a community, still trying to earn money, and
Mhm,
I was bottom of the pile. You know, the self-care wasn't there for me. It was all outside of myself. And also, you know, I believe for me, perimenopause started pretty much straight after I had my son. So I was breastfeeding through perimenopause and having all the symptoms, migraines and the irregular cycle, and
mhm,
you know, and yeah, just not allowing myself that time to just really drop into that threshold that I was
mhm,
stepping into as a woman.
mhm.
So I was burnt out basically. I just got to the point where I was absolutely burnt out. And my husband didn't want to leave the community because we'd invested money in it. So I left him. I left the community and left him because I could recognize that it wasn't working for me. And I was even saying to him, you know, I feel like I'm getting sick. Um, and
Yeah.
it was about 6 months later that I had the first cancer diagnosis,
Uh-huh.
which at the time wasn't a surprise to me because I just felt like I pushed myself through so much.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
So this is really important because intuition is powerful and it's often overridden in the medical model and it's often overridden in our culture and its emphasis on work. And as women, we're often taught to override our intuition from a very early age. And had that intuition been truly honored, like a year before,
mm,
maybe something could have shifted. So that's a big lesson for me personally,
yeah, yeah,
and all of us. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's one that you know, I've sort of talk a lot about to younger women, you know, on the cusp of perimenopause, you know, this threshold that actually we need to really rest through and drop into. And, you know, it's like, you know, puberty. I look at my 14-year-old daughter who started cycling a year ago, and, you know, she's really in the thick of her hormones and it's going to go on for a few years. And
Mhm.
it's like, we don't give ourselves that time with menopause. You know, we can think back to our youth and, you know, those changes in our bodies and how, you know, it's not just you start bleeding and then you're a woman. You know, it takes years of development of all the body changes and the hormones, and the same for menopause. And yet, you know, at this age often we're on the treadmill of mothering, earning, maybe even looking after elderly parents, or you know,
Yeah. The
so
stack of
much to juggle.
responsibilities can be so high.
Yeah,
And it's really up to us to remove some of those layers. Nobody else can make those choices for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I remember sitting down and writing a list of all the things that stress me out. And it was like, can I give these jobs to other people, or can I just let them go, or do I, you know, do I even need these in my life anymore? You know, that's that absolute culling of, you know, just some of the things that I took on.
Yeah. To put yourself in your womb and first.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, in your book where you talk about your cancer journey, there were so many things that really stood out to me, but one of them is that when you receive a diagnosis of cancer, there's two ways to receive it. And there's people who take it and quietly wait for it to deteriorate them, who might cry and be brave, but this is, the outcome they're already seeing. And there are those who hear it and say, no, I want to live. That
Mm.
I want to live is important. And what is it for you that I want to live comes from? Where is this deep well that allowed you to respond naturally with this energy?
I think it's been in me since I was a child. I mean, I remember struggling as a child to be here, to be on this dense planet with the family that I'd chosen. But there was something deep inside me that I knew I was meant to be here, and I knew I was meant to be here now. And I think when I had the cancer diagnosis, that came in even stronger. It was like, no, I can't die because these are the times I was born for. It's like all the tools I'd gathered in my life were really sustaining me and the other people in my life that, I wouldn't say I was supporting them, but I'd been running a women's group for years, and we were just all in the same energy of like, this is what we're here for. We need to wake up and really shine our lights and step out into the world, and drop the fear of, that we might be burnt at the stake if we do that, or whatever that is for women, that kind of
Mhm.
stops us from really being in our power.
Mhm.
And I think that was part of the cancer, was that I really had to burn away that part of me that was scared to be seen.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Uh-huh. And like you said, we all carry that fear of being burned at the stake, suffocated, silenced, stoned, across
Yeah,
cultures in its different ways.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so another thing that you really mentioned strongly is that cancer is a big wake-up call, and it's a big question. Are you ready to change? It's a call to change. And the biggest change, as you've just alluded to, is self-love.
yeah,
This is what you write about. And talk to us a little bit about how this realization that self-love had to come foremost, that it was the change that would ultimately allow you to enter the healing field. Through the first diagnosis, you said, no, I'm going to do this my way.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, talk to us about those components.
I think there's so many layers to it, isn't there? Because I think I thought I loved myself. I really thought that I was doing a really good job of loving myself. I ate well. I was taking care of my family in the best way I possibly could, and I'd chosen to move out of the city and get out of that kind of that rat race. But somehow I'd recreated the same thing, but in a beautiful place in the countryside, and it was that kind of peeling back those layers of, like I said, putting myself first. And I was very blessed that actually, while I was still in the community, at one point some friends of mine who were menopause kind of um, leading the way with menopause work, they did a course called Self-Kindness, and it was just a little mini online course, and they talked a lot about rest. And I remember following this course and taking those moments of rest and hearing this voice going, you're not allowed to rest. Oh, this is lazy. You need to get on with the washing up, or, and having to really do the self-talk of like, shut up. I deserve to rest. I'm a divine being. And, I need to get off the treadmill and nurture myself. And I think, as women, we're just so, well, as society, we're ingrained to just do, keep doing, keep doing, keep doing. And it is that, how can I be? And how can I be
Yeah.
restful in that being?
So this is beautiful. What's just dropped into my awareness as you spoke is we are not a means of production. We are divine beings, and the purpose of a divine being is not to produce a profit or a good or a service even. The purpose of a divine being is to radiate that divinity, no matter what they're doing as that happens. But we've forgotten how to even access that divinity before we can even think about radiating it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And that word radiant became one of my words. It became like my mantra of like, I don't care about my health. I just want to be radiant in all that I do. Can I be a radiant being? Because actually, when you're, like you say, when you're radiating in that divinity, life just flows. And I trusted that my health would flow too
Um,
with that. So, instead of like focusing on health being the goal, it was kind of like, you know, if you're affirming health, then you're ill, aren't you? So it's like you have to let go of those words really and step into, who do you really want to be? I want to be a radiant being that can lead the way.
uh-huh. Yeah. Um, we'll get through the incredible story of a first diagnosis and then a second. But this is just so powerful to me. When you had your second diagnosis, I want to bring this forward now, that you took the position within yourself of saying, I am a person who can live with cancer.
Yeah.
Actually, the goal for me is not to completely eradicate it, but the goal for me is to be a person who can live and walk on this earth, with or without it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a radical mindset, in contrast to the allopathic model, which is about poisoning it and killing it. Uh,
Yeah.
you did a beautiful weaving of different models here. So
Yeah, yeah, I did. And it surprised me that I did end up choosing some allopathic routes because I'd been so against it. But I think that's also part of the softening and kind of going, you know what, maybe this might help. You know, maybe I could try this. And that was working with a really good herbalist. And I remember, you know, I was absolutely adamant, I'm not having a hysterectomy. And she's like, well, you know, maybe just sit with the possibility and be curious around, you know, why you know why you feel that strongly, and what would it be to have one. And you know, and it was really good having people like that to work with me, to kind of challenge me in some ways, because I'm quite strong and stubborn, and I get an idea in my head and I stick with it, you know, and it's like no, no, no. And I had to really soften and listen to that intuition, and in the end my intuition was saying, take the chemotherapy. You
yeah,
know, and it was partly, you know, I know you do shamanic work too. It's just like, you can transmute this. You can see, you know, instead of calling it poison, call it love medicine. You know, it's like we can change the story of whatever we want to. You know, we create our own reality. So if we change the story of cancer to be one of life instead of death, you know, it's
yeah,
like,
yes. This is what's so remarkable to me about your journey is, choosing to see cancer as an opportunity for life.
mm,
Yeah, it just comes through again and again and again. And yeah, this weaving of allopathic, shamanic, alternative methods together, I believe personally, is our only way forward, because we live in a time of complex illnesses, complex environmental pollutants, and huge internal changes happening within every person. And there's no one right answer, which is again why the intuition, like the combination of methods we use and the timing of them, really is our own choice.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's one of the things that I really work with people. It's like, really listen to your intuition, or even listen to your cells. You know, what would it be like to talk to your cells? And I, you know, I've had women when I was doing the womb work, it's like, what does your womb say? And they just look at me like, what are you talking about? It's like, we ask the question to your womb, and see what the answer is, see what arrives. And it is that the first thing that comes up, just don't brush it off. You know, that might be the answer. And I think we are programmed in a way to not listen to that voice inside, to brush it away, and think it's not the truth.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it
Mhm.
and it is discernment, isn't it? Like I said, you know, I did have those kind of, you know, the voices that, what are you doing? You should do as the doctors, and you have to kind of go, no, I'm not listening to you, or you're lazy, or all those. It's like, no, that's not my inner wisdom. That's the programming. That's my mother talking, or my grandmother, or you know.
Yeah, that this is vital, and this is why we need mirrors and helpers and guides. So both in the subtle and astral dimensions, our ancestors who have passed, any angelic beings or spirit helpers, animal guides that we work with, and then um, the people around us, our herbalists, our I use Ayurveda and naturopathy, to support me. And yeah, they can bring forward a perspective that just mirrors and helps us with that discernment. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of the things I talk about in the book, is get a good team of people around you. And that's another part of self-love, that actually, you know, you're worth it. You're worth paying for the therapist that you need around you, you know, and that's, it's stepping into abundance is another part of wellness. You know,
Mhm.
it's like, you know, I could have so easily just stayed in lack and fear and, you know, no, I'm not going to pay for this and I'm not going to pay for that. But actually with the valuing myself, the abundance just came, and there was always enough money. You know, I was really grateful for my friends did set up a GoFundMe, and you know, the yeah, but I mean, I look back and if I added up how much money I spent on my healing journey, I'd be like, whoa, you know, what I could have done with that money. But I healed myself. That's what I did.
Yeah, you're alive, radiant, divine, and living with purpose and joy. I
Yeah,
mean, if you
can't
don't
find
have
that
that, you
really.
don't have anything,
Exactly.
actually.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that, you know, almost have to drum into people. It's like if you haven't got your health, you haven't got a life. You know, it's like we have to look after ourselves, and you know,
Mm,
self-love,
mm,
self-care is
mm.
prevention. It's health
Yeah,
prevention. Yeah.
yeah, prevention is so vital. And even when we've passed a serious illness, to stay in that preventative mode, it is actually a part of the way we can live that promotes health continuously. Health isn't like a plateau that you reach and then you're healthy. It's
No.
an ever growing, becoming, shifting landscape because our body is an ecosystem that needs
Yeah. Yeah.
tending. Yeah.
And it's changing all the time. So a diet that might have worked really well for you 10 years ago may not serve your body anymore. And that's been an interesting journey for me. Kind of look, just go, oh, I can't actually eat those foods anymore. My body doesn't want them. And that's the, you know, really deeply listening, the
Mhm.
intuition and, you know, your body, the symptoms your body comes up with when you maybe have too much chili or
Uh-huh.
hot flushes start coming. I'm like, okay, no chili.
Oh man, I love my chilies.
Yeah, no, I do too. My hot flushes really kick off with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so let's just for our listeners who haven't met you yet, let's just talk through this story a little bit. So you had the first diagnosis, which was a cervical cancer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as I understood, that was a period of a year or a rather shorter period. And then you felt that it was cleared, you celebrated, and you had done that completely naturally.
Yeah.
Um, and then came the next. So just take us through that progression a little bit.
Yeah, it was interesting because I just went into complete like I'm fine now, all's good, and not completely back into the normal life I had before, but I was still working a lot and mothering and, you know, holding space for other people and holding women's groups. And it, you know, I loved my work, but
Mm.
I looking back, it was time to let it go. It was time to hand that over to the younger women because I, you know, I was perimenopausal and hardly bleeding, and I'm still running this business that's based all around wombs and our cycles. So um yeah, so what ended up happening was I was actually over in Portugal supporting a friend of mine whose partner had passed away. And I hadn't, I suppose we just don't know what it's like to hold someone in grief until we do it. And as beautiful as it was to witness, you know, it was very emotional and at times I would say probably quite traumatic. And when I came back from Portugal, it was only, you know, we were only there for a week. I started having pains in my side and I thought it was my appendix. So I
Mhm.
went to, and also this was right on the cusp of the lockdown. So we literally flew back in from Portugal. I think we were one of the last flights back into the UK before lockdown happened. So it wasn't that easy to get a doctor's appointment. And when I did eventually see someone, they said, "Oh, it's not your appendix. It's probably the cysts on your ovaries." And I was very confused by that because no one had mentioned cysts on my ovaries. um, so they just said, "Oh, you know, just keep an eye on it and come go to A&E if it gets worse," basically.
Oh my.
Yeah.
With your
So
history of having had cervical cancer, that's not really the appropriate response, but go ahead.
no, I mean that's one of the things in hindsight you just think, wow. And you know, when someone has a history of cancer, yeah, really look after them and keep an eye on things.
Mhm.
Um, so it took a while. I did end up with more pain and went back went into A&E and had a series of tests, and weirdly saw the same doctor that I'd seen for my first diagnosis, and she was a bit, "Well, you should have got the hysterectomy." I was just like, we don't even know at this point what it is. You know, they were still saying cysts on the ovaries. They wanted to do a biopsy, which I didn't want to do because I'd just seen people who had biopsies and their cancer just gone boom from spread
Uh-huh.
from biopsy. So I know I just said, look, I've come to terms with having a hysterectomy. That's what I need to do. Let's have the hysterectomy, and you can biopsy my ovaries afterwards, and see what's going on. And they had actually said that they had thought the cysts on my ovaries were just normal ovulation. That they hadn't thought there was anything to worry about. But when I had an ultrasound, they were coming up as being very large, and there being fluid around the womb, so there was concern. But it took, because of all the lockdown and everything that was going on, it took a while to get a proper diagnosis, to see my oncologist. Um, they they still obviously couldn't say it's definitely cancer without doing the biopsy, but they were saying, yes, there's a tumor in the womb, and it's probably spread to your ligaments. It's probably in your lymph. The cysts on your ovaries are probably tumors. It's all probably. Um, and it's too late to do a hysterectomy, because if it spread that much, obviously doing surgery, it would just go crazy. So there was just always felt like there was another layer of surrender. It's like, okay, I've surrendered to having a hysterectomy and losing my womb, which I'd fought to keep. And then they're telling me I can't, and the only treatment was radiotherapy and chemotherapy, which I hadn't wanted to do. So, I never said yes to anything straight away. I always went, okay, I'm going to think about this. I'm going to talk to my team of my natural doctors or naturopaths and things I work with, and feel into it. And while I was taking that time to feel into it, one of the tumors or cysts burst, so I end up being rushed into A&E, and then they decide that they're going to do surgery and at least remove the ovaries. So there's another having been told, no, we can't do surgery, to okay, we're going to do surgery. It was just like, it's really hard to navigate that medical system. And the fact that the doctors have all these meetings where you're not there to decide what's best for you, which I just find really strange, that they don't include the person whose body they're talking about. And that's the medical model. They're just looking at this tiny bit of your body and they're dealing with that. They're not dealing with you as a whole person, which is why I had the team of other people that did deal with me as a whole person.
Exactly. The medical model can do so much, but that glaring, incomplete aspect to it, we actually have to take personal responsibility for bringing that back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what happens next?
So eventually the surgery got scheduled and then postponed and scheduled again, and of course there's all the COVID stuff, so it's just like I have to not see anybody because I can't take COVID into the hospital, and I'm really riling against that because I haven't followed any of the rules at all. My women's group kept meeting, and we were just all in this, what, we know that we need to see our friends, and we know that we heal through oxytocin and through hugging, and I was just like, if I'm dying anyway, I'm gonna live my life. I'm gonna enjoy my life. So I actually had this, what felt very blessed, moment of, a couple of days before I was due to have surgery. I had a moon blood, what I call my period, my moon blood. And I just thought, wow, how many women know when their last moon blood is? And so I just, even though I was supposed to be isolating, I called my women and I was like, I've had my last bleed. I want to celebrate this with you. I want to go down to the river. I want to be witnessed. And I'd also had this intuition about being baptized. It was really coming in strongly, this word, you need to be baptized, you need to be born again, you need to be cleared, and not in the church way. you know. So that was what it was. It was like, come down to the river with me, witness me, you know, witness me bleeding, witness me naked, witness me in all I am with these, you know, my belly was huge. I looked about 6 months pregnant with these tumors,
Uh-huh.
and just, you know, plunged myself in the river being witnessed by these women, which was so beautiful. You know, they painted my body with ochre and sang to me, and they were drumming on the side of the river. And, you know, it was, you know, those moments of just like feeling your sisters holding you. And that's where I knew that, I just knew every step, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay, because I had my sisters, I had my family, and I had my spirit. You know, you were saying about your ancestors, my spirit guides. You know, I just had this deep intuition, and I even surrendered to that could be death, you know, but it's all going to be okay.
Uh-huh.
Even if it's moving, you know, moving across the veil, it's all going to be okay. So yeah, so that felt very special, because it was just like, okay, this is it. This is me crossing a threshold into being an elder as well, even though I was only 48, 49.
Yeah.
You know, it's like going into medical menopause.
So, yeah, this is massive because from not having taken time for yourself to now um, having that discernment, knowing deep inside, I want this ritual, and using your voice to be seen and navigate the allopathic medical system, to ask for what you need, to build your support group, and then that sense of peace just washing over you. So I
Mm,
just want to encourage our listeners to go through that process of finding your discernment, and go through that process of letting your voice come free and standing in your power, because in my experience, that is the only route to peace. Peace requires a real stepping up into your personal sense of who you are.
yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And being at peace with that, isn't it? It's like,
Mm.
this is me, you know,
Mhm.
everything. This is me, and I love myself, and I'm at peace with myself.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah. And taking that sense with me into going into surgery, I decided to see it as a retreat. I was like, you know, pretend it's a spa. It's not a hospital, it's a spa. I went with my bag of juices because I knew the food was going to be awful. So I had some juices and frozen juices and fruit and, you know, good food packed in, you know, herbal teas, all that kind of stuff in my suitcase. I mean, in fact, that's what my cupboard was, just full of food.
Uh-huh.
And you know, I had my phone obviously with my friends at the other end of it. They'd created a group so that
Mhm.
I could just text, you know, whenever I needed a bit of support. And when the surgery was scheduled, I texted them all telling what time I was going in for the surgery, and they were drumming and singing and praying. And you know, I had a couple of friends that were shamanic practitioners, because I was a little bit like, what happens to your soul when you go under anesthetic?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I have no memory. You go under and then you wake up. It's really weird.
Mhm.
But I did have a sense of my dad who'd passed. My dad was with me, and my friend's partner who'd passed in Portugal. You know, I felt them really with me in the room
Mhm.
um, before the surgery, and I wasn't scared. And it was weird, because the nurse was holding my hand, going, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I was just like, "I'm fine," because I totally trusted the process that I was
Yeah.
going through.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. This is a key concept throughout the book, which is throughout your life, um, and it's the ability to reframe.
yeah,
And I don't feel this is just making lemonade out of lemons. Actually, this is a life skill that we all need, whether we've had a cancer diagnosis or not. The ability to reframe allows us to restory and to have agency in the healing process that we're going through.
yeah.
And your reframing is funny, jubilant, beautiful. It's really an inspiration to me in this way,
You. And it's funny, because I remember sort of talking to a friend about, you know, how I was seeing my journey with cancer, and she went, "Well, I suppose if that helps you." And it was almost like, oh, you know, she looked at me like I was just making up this silly story, and it was just like, because she couldn't get on board with the fact that I really felt spirit was leading me, and that this is what I was meant to go through. That I was meant to be a shining light in this path of
Mhm.
healing.
Mhm.
And it's I knew it in my bones that this is what I was meant to
Yeah,
do. And it, of course, when I got the second diagnosis, I was a little bit like, oh, I thought it had worked. I thought I'd done enough. But you just have to dig deeper each time. You just dig deeper, and
absolutely.
it's that.
Whatever it takes, whatever it takes. And I find when we reach the point of willingness to do whatever it takes, that's when real transformation begins.
Yeah. And that's the key word, willingness. It's like just being willing. You don't actually have to do anything. You just, other than be willing, which is almost like a surrender, isn't it? Of like, okay, I'm willing. I'm willing to forgive, or I'm willing to, I'm maybe not quite ready to forgive, but I'm willing.
Mm-hmm.
And and it'll just happen and it'll come. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking, as I hear you saying spirit was leading you and you knew that this was something for you personally to move through. It was an important part of your soul journey on this earth. And I'm thinking about the trees. Um, some trees and some locations get huge tumors.
Mm,
And they are transmuting aspects of the soil, the air, and the environment in that place. And they're providing a very powerful service that allows the whole forest to thrive.
yeah.
And yeah, so um, just thank you for being willing and to be a tree in that regard that could grow this tumor and find the way through it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I remember hearing Gabor Mate talking about in indigenous tribes, when someone gets a terminal illness, the tribe thank them for taking on the illness on behalf of the community.
uh-huh,
And I do wonder sometimes with, all the people who are not, who are ill or having diagnosis, it's kind of like, you know, are they absorbing? There's so
mhm,
much that needs absorbing and transforming and transmuting. And it's like, and especially in 2020, I was just meeting so many people who were getting cancer diagnosis. And there was part of me going, are we absorbing the fear? Are we absorbing all the fear that's in the consciousness?
uh,
I don't know, but I did have a sense of there was a bigger picture. This
mhm,
wasn't a personal, because I spent a long time kind of digging. I mean, if you look at
yeah.
certain kind of alternative health books around cancer, they can really easily label like, oh, cervical cancer is to do with sexual abuse. I hadn't had sexual abuse. That wasn't part of my story. So I was like, why have I got sexual, why have I got cancer in my cervix? And to me, it's the cervix is a boundary. It's a sacred portal, and it's a boundary. And I had let people step over my boundaries. Well, I was saying it, that it's not always personal. So I was looking for the personal reason, but actually, it's just like maybe I was doing a service on behalf of humanity or something. A psychic that I saw, she said, Rachel, you're clearing the worldwide womb wound. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. And she's like, there's all these grandmothers and they've got baskets and they want to keep giving you the baskets and you need to say no to them. I was like, okay, yeah, I've had enough of your stuff.
Ah,
So,
I had a similar teaching one night when I was in the jungle working with medicines and I was vomiting all night. Everyone else was finished and I was just going and going, continuing. And I felt like I was cleansing the oceans. And then one of the elder women just looked at me and I felt her say to me, "You could vomit forever.
oh God.
It's your choice. You
Yeah,
don't have to."
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, oh, I don't have to clean the whole oceans.
yeah.
Amazing,
Wow, yeah,
just take care of me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was another big part of my story, was that, I had something inside me that felt like I had to save the world. It's just like, whether it was getting women to switch to cloth pads and moon cups, or even when I was young, I was sort of telling my mum to recycle before people were really recycling. And there
Mm.
was something in me that was, and it was a really heavy weight. I remember dropping it with the cancer. I just went, you know what, I just have to save myself. I
Yeah.
just have to save myself, because actually I'm a mirror for the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah. Okay, Rachel. I know that self-care and a million different protocols was part of your healing process. And I do want to touch on this because there are women who, like yourself, are putting together a team for themselves on their own. And I believe the way that you used different protocols and different alternative ways of eating and being are really useful for everyone.
Yeah. So right at the start, I went to my nutritionist because I'd done some training with her. So already my diet was pretty clean, which I think maybe saved my life because maybe it would have spread more if it hadn't been. So I went back to her, and I just found it such a relief actually having someone standing next to me going, "Just eat this, Rachel. Just eat this," because there's so many different diets and so many different protocols, and it was like, do your juicing, do some cleansing, enemas, body brushing, liver packs, but eating. I basically did vegan keto for 2 years, which
Mhm.
isn't the easiest diet to do. I think it got me through menopause, as well as getting me through cancer. But I actually enjoyed it, and I it just felt it like it made my life easier. Just like, this is what you eat, and you don't eat any of that anymore, which was great because I was a big carb girl, even though I was gluten free. It was still kind of like, I love my rices and buckwheat and all those kind of things, and they all just went. And it simplified things, just really simplified things. So most days I would have a smoothie for my lunch. I remember I went through a phase of having broths for breakfast, and I'd never been a breakfast person. I'd always been like, no, I can't deal with food in the morning. Surprising myself by sitting out in the garden at 8 o'clock in the morning having a really savory broth, and lots of salads, and lots of fresh, just stuff that grows in the garden. Really going back to basics of like nothing processed. Just everything in its most natural form.
Mhm.
So it's, yeah, I mean, you have to get imaginative to make it taste good. And
Ah,
know how to make some good dressings and things like that. Tahini was my best friend.
oh, uh-huh. Did you eat a lot of sprouts? Did you eat a lot of
Yeah,
tofu?
sprouts. I wasn't doing tofu actually because
Mm.
my cancer was estrogenic, and I'm still not clear around. I think tempeh is good, but I
Mhm.
think some soya can be very processed. So it's kind of working out what's right for you. Soya beans, I love Adama beans, but I wasn't having stuff that was too highly processed. So yeah, fermented foods, really important, and doing regular cleanses. So
Yeah, you talk about this liver packs, womb packs, enemas. What is a liver pack?
so a liver pack is castor oil. You can buy castor oil packs, and you basically I mean, I bought a castor oil belt, they're called, and you pour your castor oil onto it and you put it onto your liver, and the belt kind of wraps around you, and then you put a hot water bottle on, and basically the castor oil is working to soften the liver and open it up and draw out the toxins, which
Mhm.
which you then need to do an enema to encourage the toxins to leave your body in
Mhm.
by that route, rather than, because our bodies are really clever, they dump toxins away from our main organs. So that things like arthritis are actually toxins in your fingers. It's your
Mhm.
body doing a really good job of pushing it to the extremities. But
Mhm.
actually, I believe if we cleanse regularly, then we can avoid getting those degenerative diseases,
Mhm.
and obviously diet as well. So all of those things. So I've just actually done a liver flush this weekend with a group
Mhm.
where we were drinking olive oil and
Uh-huh.
flushing out those gallstones and liver stones.
Yeah.
It's never a particularly pleasant process.
Love a good liver cleanse. Oh, they just, you radiate
Yeah,
afterward from the cleanliness of your system.
yeah,
Yeah. And this
exactly.
is the whatever it takes. When people say, oh, I don't like to purge, I can't do an enema, or I could never do that kind of liver cleanse. Well, why not? It's
Yeah.
your life, it's your health.
And if you think about your gut, is it's this massive, I can't remember the dimension, but it's huge. Our gut lining is huge, and it's the same as our skin, and we take care of our skin. Why would we not take care of our guts? And that's what, for me, an enema is taking care of my insides, making
Yeah.
sure that stuff doesn't get stuck there. Because it does. It's always amazing when you do a cleanse and you're just like, really, there's still more stuff coming out of me.
I've been cleansing for years.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
bit like doing the dishes, cleaning the house, it builds up again and it kind of needs constant attention.
yeah. Because it's not just the food we're putting in, it's also all our dead skin cells and
Mhm.
decaying cells that are inside our body and old blood and all of that. So it all needs constant. And for me, enemas is just a good way of reminding the body that that's the route you want those toxins to go down. Just take them out that way.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's a wonderful way to think about them. Body, this is where you want to be
Dump it.
focusing on. Yeah, don't dump it in my joints, please.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, well, this drink one green juice a day. I'm living by this since reading your book. It's something I had been encouraged to do anyway by my naturopath. But actually, from your story, I said that's one thing that I can immediately just commit to one green juice a day because I'm already on the cusp of that. And I feel like learning the wisdom from each other who have gone through different journeys is really important. So, again, thank you for going on this journey. And I'm taking from this one green juice a day, reframing, and also joy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the way that you reframed the chemotherapy as love and as liquid light moving in. And to me, that's connected to this thing you write about with joy and with going ahead and doing something joyful every day.
Mm. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be difficult. I mean, it could be just putting your favorite song on and dancing around the kitchen. You know what? I think it took getting cancer for me to actually realize what joy was. I mean, it was this elusive thing that you're always chasing. It's like the joy's over there. It's at that party, or it's at the swimming pool, or it's at the beach, or and actually, how can I create joy on my own? Especially when you're ill. If what if you can't get out of bed? How do you create joy for yourself when you can't get out of bed? But it's just that it's a feeling. You can choose to feel joy in any moment,
Mm.
and just like put a smile on your face, like, open your heart. It's just kind of like it's there for the taking. It's a bit like, you can choose to vomit forever or you can choose joy. It's like,
I'll take a big cup full of joy, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. What brings me joy may not bring you joy. I mean, I imagine your dog probably brings you a lot of joy. Our pets, our animals, children, the sunshine. But it's like when we can't rely on those things, how do we create it for ourselves? How do we sit in joy when we're just on our own?
So, yeah, this is wonderful because if we look at any journey of transformation, that whole process of surrender, acceptance, discernment, finding your voice, it can weave across many different illnesses and journeys. And we often forget when we're at that stage of it that the joy part is so important. But eventually we do come there, and the willingness to keep pushing through until we can find that motor for joy
Yeah,
within. I just want to encourage everyone, keep going until that motor for joy can just be pulled with a little lever, little string, and it's whirring, and there you go.
yeah. I love that analogy. Yes. Yeah. And things like this for me, like connecting with you in this way, this brings me joy, being able to share. It's just like, and I'm so grateful for technology, so grateful for technology. As much
Yeah,
it can make life harder, it enables us to do beautiful things like this and be able to reach so many people you know
yeah, yeah. Um, I believe this is part of the age of Aquarius is our ability to stop framing things as good and bad so
Mm,
much and
mm,
just be like, well, how does this work? How can it serve
yeah,
my inner vibration that I'm holding?
yeah,
And who else wants to be in this vibration with me? If
yeah,
we can connect through technology, that's fabulous.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And same with our cancers, our arthritises. Many people are dealing with heart issues. There's so much happening right now on a massive global scale, and it may continue for some time as we collectively transmute what we're living.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, for us to each know that we are the generators of joy and health, not by consuming, not by earning, not by judging,
mm,
but by being with each other and with ourselves.
yeah.
Rachel, what would be your words of wisdom on how to bridge a ritual, shamanic, natural, holistic perspective on healing with the allopathic model? Because it's one thing to say, do it, but some of our listeners might want some encouragement about specific framing, words, activities. Like I've latched on to the one green juice a day that they might just be able to say, I can do that.
Yeah, and I think that, and that's it. It's so overwhelming sometimes when there's, especially when you're in that allopathic system, and it's quite fear-based. So it's really hard to not fall into that. So for me, it was, how can I support myself to stay in the joy? So whether it was, listening to uplifting music on my way to a doctor's appointment, or um, making it a ritual. So taking, if you have to take medication, can you pray over your medication, ask for it to be blessed, see it as loving light, whatever way it was. I mean, I was visualizing Mother Mary and Yeshua, Jesus, kind of blessing the chemotherapy. And I had an actual meditation that's made for people who are going through chemotherapy, and it was, I'd listen to that, and it was visualizing it as medicine that had been specifically made for me and specifically made for my body, and that it was going to work. So yeah, and adding in, um like for me, sitting in the hospital, I would put myself in a protected bubble of light, all of those little rituals that you can do for yourself, or calling in your angels to sit with you, or whatever it, it totally depends on what your beliefs are and where you're at with that kind of thing. But yes, you could ask someone to be drumming at home for you while you're having a treatment or having surgery or having a scan, or it's like calling in that tribe of support. But I think, like you said, it's important to just choose one thing, and get that under your belt, get the green juice under your belt, or whether you're choosing to have a go at a cleanse or a liver pack or an enema. Don't get overwhelmed, because I remember getting the Gershon book of the, how they cure cancer in the Gershon clinics, and it's full on. It's like 10 juices a day and 10 enemas a day, and I was just going, there was not enough hours in the day to do this. So you have to make it bite-sized chunks and what will work for you.
Uh-huh.
And number one is always drink more water. My naturopath has a saying of, dilution is the solution to pollution.
Uh-huh.
So everyone's dehydrated, and
Mhm.
most people are drinking pretty crappy tap water. Switch to a good filter and hydrate your body. Number one, hydrate your body. I
Uh-huh.
think, and then the cells can just open up and do what they need to do often.
Yeah. And how can we expect them to continue to heal without support?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it really is a kind of mind, body, spirit, because I think the first time around I focused so much on the body and on my physical healing, and drinking the juices, and I was going to hyperbaric oxygen, and I wasn't focusing on the emotional and the spiritual so much. I think that, I
Mhm.
mean, the spiritual's always there for me. I've always meditated, done breath work, that kind of thing. But I really had to up the ante. I was visualizing myself in crystal temples having healing, and really going for it, and using crystals and using singing bowls and
Mhm.
listening to beautiful solfeggio frequency things on YouTube. I mean, a lot of this stuff is free. There's so many healing modalities out there that we can get for free these days with the
Yeah.
technology that we've got now.
Mhm.
Beautiful sound healing and breath work and meditations all on YouTube.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all there. You just have to choose what works for you. And I think that's where sometimes people, if they're not in tune with their intuition, and
Mhm.
they haven't had an inkling of what that self-love is and what that self-care is, you know, it can take a while to really work out what you need to do to support yourself. But I think the joy is a good one, because it's like, does it bring you joy? It doesn't bring you joy, don't you? You know,
Yep.
that almost became a barometer. It's like, if it's not joy, beauty, and love, no, it can go away.
Uh-huh. Only joy, beauty, and love in my life and in my body. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, Rachel, tell us where you're at now, because you went through the chemotherapy. You did this incredible weaving. And how many years ago was that? Did you get the all clear? Has that stayed? You know, how has this evolved for you?
Okay, so I got a phone call. I'd had my last chemotherapy. I did 6 months of chemotherapy. I had my last chemotherapy in January 2021. And then they did a scan to see what was going on with my body. And I remember getting a phone call to book me in for my radiotherapy. And I said, hang on a minute, have you got my scan results? So she went off and came back and said, yes, all clear. There's no tumor in the womb. There's no cancer in the ligaments. So can we book you in for your radiotherapy? And I just went, do you know what? I just want to absorb that news,
Yeah.
and I'll get back to you. And I put the phone down. And I actually had a house full of friends at that time. And we
Mhm.
all just started screaming. It was just like, oh my God, I've done it. I've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was just like amazing. And in hindsight, I think, you know, how many people maybe get that phone call and don't ask for their scan results and just go, yeah, give me the radiotherapy. I don't know. But I did have another phone call with the doctor asking why they wanted to give me radiotherapy, and they said just in case, to mop up any stray cells. And we're all living with cancer cells in our bodies. If we're healthy, our body just clears them out with the rest of the debris. So
Uh-huh.
I knew from that model that they're constantly looking for illness, and
Mm,
their ways of treating it are pretty barbaric. So I decided that I didn't want any more to do with them. I felt like I really was on the golden timeline of health. Um, Even some of the practitioners I work with, you know, I had a kinesiologist, and he was just like, no, I can see you. I can see you. You're on this golden timeline of health. You're all good. Um,
mm,
and I trusted that, and my intuition and the messages I was getting was, you're done. You're done. You've just cleared a whole load of ancestral shit, you know, and karmic shit, and you're done. And I was just like, okay, okay.
Ooh, that is just giving me goosebumps over my entire body,
Yeah,
because we each have our journey, and I'm in the process of working with the skin thing that has come and gone over 9 years, and I'm upping the ante of my own protocols and spiritual work right now. And I just saw that this golden timeline, it's there. It's
yeah,
like one step away. You're getting close.
yeah.
Um,
Just choose to jump on it. You got one practitioner who said, I can see you've wrapped it around you several times. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm not letting go of this golden timeline. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, and it was interesting because their reaction was that because I was refusing their treatment, they wouldn't give me any more scans or any more appointments. And I did write and complain, and I actually wrote my oncologist quite a long letter, and I listed all the books that I thought she should read, and I told her that she needed to open her mind a bit to other things that can work. And I put into place the protocols that I felt would serve me in staying well. So I still take mistletoe. I have mistletoe injections. I think mistletoe is an amazing medicine. You know, I still eat really well. I still do cleanses and enemas and meditate and do my breath work and get out in nature and all the things that, you know, I see are integral for everybody's health. You know, everyone needs to be doing these things. I have since had a couple of scans when I felt like there was something not quite right in my body and I wanted it checked out.
Mhm.
Um, I get flare-ups. My bowel's quite sensitive. It always has been, but of course, as soon as I mention it to the doctor, they go bowel cancer. You know? So,
Yay.
you know, so far, all my scans have come back completely clear, you know, no cancer, a little bit of diverticulitis. So I have to be, again, it's just, you know, being aware of what you're doing to your body, being aware of what you're putting in it, supporting it to stay in radiant health.
Yeah. And not letting go of that golden timeline of health.
Yeah,
As you
yeah,
said.
yeah. And every time I do have a little wobble, I kind of remind myself, no, I'm done. And actually, I didn't want to write the book because I didn't want to get stuck into the story again.
Mm.
Because I think, you know, I talk about this in the book where people have an illness as their story.
Yeah.
But I had so many friends just going, your story is going to help people. And I even had one friend who was constantly texting me pictures of chickens, like book, book, book. Okay, okay. But I had to put some distance between the cancer and writing. I had to kind of process, because when I got the all clear, I was a little bit like, okay, what do I do now? Because my life had been so full of, you know, this healing. You know, it became my life. So it's just like, wow, I can choose whatever I want. Actually, it was quite exciting. It's like, who do I want to be now? This is like the next version of Rachel. Who's she going to be? Who does she want to be in the world? So yeah, and I still feel like I'm in that process of
Mhm.
finding who I am. I've moved house recently, so I'm in a new place, and you know that it's a real change of energy here, and it's
Mhm.
like I just trust spirit will show me what I need to do.
Uh-huh. And do you still have some children living at home?
Yeah, so I have yeah, my two that are 14 and 11. They're half the week with me and half the week with their dad. So
Yeah,
yeah,
super. And what an amazing story for them to watch and witness. Oh
yeah,
my goodness, they will not forget that. And actually, the ancestral and karmic healing that you've done, they do not have to transmute now.
no,
And that's
no.
powerful.
I was told in my 20s that I was going to be the one in my family to clear all the ancestral trauma, and I was going, why me? You know, I've got older siblings. I'm the only one that's had children out of all my family. I'm the only one that's had children. So it was like, okay, yeah, I have to clear it for them.
Yeah. So this is the care for the next generations. And I do believe that right now, we are all transmuting ancestral and karmic energies as we change our place as a human race. Our, you know, our way of civilization and our way of life is rapidly going to shift. And um, these stories want to be transmuted and cleared so that our children can create something of beauty and abundance and health and reciprocity. They don't want these seeds in the new model.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating seeing my children because they've been brought up with such healthful food. You know, they came back from a home ed group and they were like, "Mum, what's a penguin bar?" It's like I was like, "Oh, those do they still make those crappy, horrible chocolate bars?" They didn't know what they were. They were just like, "What
Wow.
are they, Mum?" And I was like, "I am so glad that you have no idea what a penguin chocolate bar is." And
Yeah.
they also don't feel like they've missed out because you know, they taste food like that and they just go, "Oh, Mum, it's horrible."
Yeah.
You know, and we make our own. You know, we have fun in the kitchen making, you know,
Mhm.
delicious recipes and homemade brownies and raw chocolates and, you know,
Mhm. Mhm. What an encouraging um, thing for us to realize is that we can prioritize our health. We can make the time. We can prioritize our family. It's just about believing we can and knowing we can, whether we have a diagnosis or not. Let's just do it now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That, I mean, this is it. This is the self-love and the self-care is the health care for the future.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So your book is having a book launch party very soon. It's the middle of March now when we're recording this, and I just felt such an impulse, like I have to record this podcast now. Like I can't watch the women I know suffering and not respond in some ways that I can. And then I saw that your book launch is coming up. So tell us about this and when it's going to be and how we can join in if we like.
So I picked a date that worked for me in my diary and I had no idea it was Easter Sunday. So it's on Easter Sunday. But I thought, do you know what? It's all about rebirth. It's all about, you know, healing, so why not? And I decided, instead of it being all about me and my book, that I would interview people like you have done with me. I would interview people who are cancer thrivers, or parents of children who've had cancer, or people who support people who've got cancer. So I've got a whole range of different people that I've interviewed, and all the videos will be played on my YouTube channel on Easter Sunday. So we start with my friend Annie and I, who was my mentor, with an opening ceremony at 10 o'clock on YouTube. So I'll send you the links and you can add them so that
Yeah.
you can sign up. And we're also doing a Q&A Zoom on April the 4th for anyone who's would like to connect with me, and a couple of the other interviewees are going to be on the call, just to give reassurance. And, you know, we're not medical doctors, we can't, you know, support in that way, but just to kind of go, you know what, we know what you're going through, and we've been through it, and we're still here. And I
Yeah.
think that's the hope, is that we're still here.
Yeah. Fantastic. So that's Easter Sunday to watch interviews with many other survivors and thrivers,
Yeah.
with Rachael, and April 4th to do a Zoom Q&A just to talk. So yeah, I'll put that out there for sure, and the links will be in the comments. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hannah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And there's lots of ways to work with Rachael, including online journeys, dowsing, healing sessions, and drum making, which we didn't talk about some of those things today. She's so multi-talented. And you can reach her at rachelcrow.co.uk, and that link will also be in the description.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
It's
I
been
really look forward to the continuing conversation around cancer thriving and surviving.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a joy. Thank you, Rachael.
Thank you.